I wanted to run all the stuff before we got to you to show you, and I know you know, and everybody watching around the world, me and you tonight, that we have disintegrated on our political front and our media front here. Is your movie, and I'll get the name of it again, Something to Stand For, is that going to uplift us?
I sure hope so. I found it uplifting to do. And before I brag about it, let me tell you that I think you made a really important point early on about our media. And I think a lot today about that Hans Christian Andersen story, you know, The Emperor's New Clothes. And I think about the courage that kid had, or maybe just the complete lack of guile in saying, hey, wait, you know, he's naked. And all the townspeople, you know, who had been pretending that he wasn't, finally getting that memo. That's what we need our media to be, right? We need somebody to tell us the truth. Otherwise, we're just townspeople nodding along. So,
but it's not going to happen on the corporate level. It does happen independently. I mean, you tell the truth on your podcast, as far as I know. I tell the truth at great risk to me personally and professionally. I'm blackballed by a lot of the big media companies because I tell the truth. They don't want to hear that. There's so much money to be made now in the speaking to the choir precincts that the corporate media is not going to abandon that. But your movie, and I'm looking forward to seeing it, it runs down a bunch of very huge historical occurrences: American Revolution, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, but in a way that complements America. Is that right?
It's correct. You look, I'm not just interested in history. My dad was a history teacher. My podcast is called The Way I Heard It because obviously I wasn't there to bear witness to these events, but I think they're so important. And I'm borrowing from Paul Harvey, who I'm sure you must have met in your time.
Sure, absolutely.
His radio show, The Rest of the Story, was such a great way to present a mystery, right? Tell you something you didn't know about somebody you do, take you along for a ride, and then have a reveal at the end. And my podcast has done well with that formula, which I borrowed. And this movie uses it. We have 9 stories. Each one is a brief mystery about somebody you know that focuses on something that you didn't. And we've lined them all up together, and stitched in between is a trip to the National Mall where I visit the statuary and the memorials and the monuments that in many cases were built to honor the men that the movie pays a tribute to. So obviously, it's a love letter to the country for Independence Day. And it was inspired in no small part by some of the points you were making earlier. It's not about liberal or Democrat or Republican or conservative. It's really about American and anti-American. When you look at the attacks on our statuary, when you look at our willful decision to judge the past by today's standards, you can start, I think, to maybe understand the disconnect that has an awful lot of people confused this 4th of July.
Now, how did you get the film produced? No big corporation would back a film like this. Would you raise the money independently?
Yeah, I went to Oklahoma. I hired 300 actors from Oklahoma, the entire crew, 100 people from Oklahoma. There might have been 2 people from Texas, but by and large, it was a message from the heart, you know, delivered from the heartland.
All right, but who paid for all that, Mike?
Well, I mean, a lot of people kind of kicked in. TBN is involved in this. Fathom is the theater group that made it happen.
Okay.
But mostly, you know, Impact Productions are partners of mine. But we took stories that I wrote over the last 6 or 7 years, and we simply adapted them to the big screen. So a lot of the actual work was already done. It just occurred to us that it seemed like it would be a good time to put something out there that focuses on humor, gratitude, the history that we used to be taught on a regular basis. It's just a good-natured tap on the country's metaphorical shoulders, Bill, to say, hey,
so it's independently financed. The folks you got investors and all of that. and then it comes out June 27th, and I'm going to go see it. And then I want you to come back, because as a historian myself, I'm going to have some questions. All right? And I hope you don't screw up, Mike, because you know me. I'm going to go right in. I'm going to go right. But
I know, no, bring it, because you've done I'm sorry to suck up like this, but your books made history interesting for people who are otherwise not interested. And that's a big part, I think, of what we need to do.
You got to be a populist, and you have to bring, and the book coming up, Confronting the Presidents, which we'll send you a galley of next week, out September 10th, is the same formula. Now, last question for you. I like the whole tone of this. Obviously, I love my country. I'm loyal to my country. But I believe that the United States of America is in a steep decline. Do you agree?
In 1998, every reliable poll pegged 70 to 71% of Americans as describing themselves as either intensely or extremely patriotic. That same poll today puts it at 39%, closer to 18% for people under 30. So when politics and patriotism become conflated, we're going to see some unintended consequences. And I think they're playing out right now. Gone are the days where Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan go out to get a steak after tearing each other's throats out during the day. We have lost the ability to have any kind of nuance when we look back in time. And look, my last thought is this: we're a work in progress. We're never going to be finished, and our country was formed by imperfect people. But the progress we've made is shocking. It's stunning. And there's still every reason in the world to celebrate it, to be proud of it, and to be grateful for it. And that's what I'm doing on Independence Day.
All right, joining us now from New York City is the legendary 83-year-old lead singer of the Beach Boys, Mike Love. And a caveat here, I've known Mr. Love for a long time, and I'm a big fan, of course. Okay, so how many dates are you doing this summer, and how's it going?
Well, we're doing a lot. The month of August is jam-packed. We're flying back the end of this week to Boston, and then drive up to Maine, go to Vermont, go to upstate New York, down to New Jersey. And as you know, on the Thursday, the 8th of August, we'll be at Jones Beach, which you just referred to. And we're doing very well at Jones Beach, and there's still a few more tickets left. I think they've opened the upper reaches, but yeah, as you can see, I'm fully into the no spin.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I'll be there, of course, on the 8th to see you guys, and I've seen you guys a dozen times. Has to be, and it never gets old. It's just because the energy that you put forth. And the memories that you conjure up of the people who see there. And by the way, if you go and buy tickets to the Beach Boys show, they have huge screens at Jones Beach. So even though you're up, you can see everything. It's tremendous video that Live Nation has put on there. Now, you're, as I mentioned, now in your 80s. How do you summon up the energy? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, I think what we're doing is stuff we've done all our lives. There's never been a time in my life where there wasn't music. My mom and her generation, my mom came at 5 years old to California, and they didn't have any money. It was the Dust Bowl days preceding the Great Depression, and they camped on the beach. Well, a generation later, we're singing about that very environment and becoming famous around the world. In fact, a psychologist in Sheffield, England, tested dozens of songs and found that Good Vibrations, our song Good Vibrations, came in at #1 for making people feel good.
But what about you? I mean, you're doing dates, or you're traveling on the road. You obviously love to do it, because when I see you out there, you're having a good time. You can't fake a good time. I saw a guy named Christopher Cross a couple of weeks ago. He was not having a good time. Okay, and
No,
I'm
that's
not diminishing him. I'm just telling you, he wasn't having a good time up there. You have a good time up there, but at your age, how do you summon the energy? Is it diet? Do you have a hypnotist go in and go, oh, we're going to sing Help Me Rhonda now? How do you do it?
I learned meditation, transcendental meditation from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in December of 1967. I was invited to go to India, and I did go. And George Harrison and I both had our birthdays in the spring of 1968 in Rishikesh, a place where the Ganges River comes out of the Himalayas. So I've been meditating ever since. I even took off 6 months one time to go to a meditation course. That meditation, you can drop your metabolism. In other words, your breath rate can go down to a level of rest twice as deep as sleep. So that's profoundly restful and relaxing. But your biochemistry of your blood changes. All the blood lactate, fatigue, that goes out the window. It's normalized. So that's my personal way of
So TM is partially responsible for your success. That's very interesting. Very
that
interesting.
and genetics.
Yeah.
Genetics.
Now,
So
the final thing is that you have trained a back group. You know, you and Johnston are there, but the back group sounds just like, okay, the original group. So it's not a different thing. You managed to duplicate the sound of the Wilson brothers and Al Jardine. How hard was it to do that?
well, you need the right people, that's for sure. Our musical director, Brian Eichenberger, was 18 years with the recent incarnation of the Four Freshmen. He sings those high parts. He'll sing the lead on "Don't Worry, Baby," which my cousin Brian did so beautifully on the record. But it's amazing how close we get to that sound. We're obsessed to recreate those songs as close to the record as possible.
So, Matheson, I can't believe it's been 8 years since killing Reagan. I came down to Georgia where they shot it. And I have to say, you were not a Hollywood pinhead. You were a regular guy. And we had a nice conversation, and I'm glad you wrote this book. And the reason I'm glad you wrote it is because you made it on your own. And that's what I respect. You're not from the Barrymore family, and you're not a cousin of Steven Spielberg, even though you know him. You kind of just made it, and it was very interesting to read the book. It is Damn Glad to Meet You, which is a line from Animal House. So let's begin with Animal House. When you guys were shooting this, a lot of young talent in the movie, did you have any idea it was going to become iconic?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we knew it was a new kind of comedy and it was different. It was comedy for young people by young people, but we had no hint other than the fact that John Belushi was in it, and that was a plus. But it just began to feel better and better and steamroll as the more we shot and went along with it. It just felt better and better. And I must say, but the studio hated it. They didn't want to make it. They didn't want any part of it, and they kept penny pinching. And the producers Ivan Reitman and the director John Landis did everything they can and could to get around those blockades and get the picture made.
Okay, so it then becomes the baby boomer memory. I think that's the best way to describe it. And anybody over the age of 60 in this country, Animal House, and even the younger people know it now because it's on TV and this and that. But it's now in the age of woke, a little controversial. And
Oh, yeah.
I think about the Otis, my man scene in the bar when, which is hilarious, but boy, I don't know if you could make that now.
Oh, you know what? You put your finger right on it. And the studio demanded that they cut that
Really?
because they said, "Oh, there's going to be riots. There's going to be race riots, and black audiences will tear up theaters, and it's going to be. You can't do that. It's racist." And the junior executives who believed in the movie um, got hold of Richard Pryor, who was under contract to the studio at the time, and said, "Richard, do us a favor. Let us know if this is offensive. If it is, we'll take it out." And Pryor looks at it, and then they took him up to the Ned Tannen, the head of the studio, and he goes, "Let me just tell you, you white people are crazy. This is funny. Leave it in because it's making fun of the white privileged kids thinking how cool they are
Of
and going
course.
into a black nightclub." And it's so that was Lampoon. They made fun
Right.
of both sides of that scene. And but you're right. You're absolutely right. To today's audiences, I don't know if they quite understand the humor.
No, I think if you screen that movie at Harvard, you'd have to give the kids a day off to recover the next day. They couldn't they couldn't go to class. They need
They'd
safe
be
space.
triggered.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's hurt the movie industry, that wokeism that has enveloped Hollywood. I think
Yeah.
Mel Brooks, a good example. A lot of his movies, you could not make them today or be ostracized. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that was the Lampoon. They'd always go right up to the edge and then over it. And
Right.
the bigger the issue, they'd confront it and piss everybody off.
Well, the best Lampoon cover ever is the guy holding the dog saying, "If you don't buy
Oh
this
my God.
magazine, we're going to kill the dog." I mean, it was hilarious. And
Oh yeah.
again, but the culture of America, in my opinion, and you know me, I mean, I don't reflect what you write or anybody else, but I think that this woke stuff has really damaged Hollywood. Now, in your world out there, you're in West Wing, and I'm a whole bunch of people. You were in 1941 with Spielberg directed that.
Sure.
It's a liberal culture, all right, right?
I think all the arts, I mean, most parts of the arts are liberal minded because it draws people from countercultures and people that are ostracized by mainstream society, and they hide out in the arts or they seek solace in the arts, and that's I think one of the reasons why it tends to be more liberal. But yeah, not to the exclusion of all points of view, as you point out. I mean, look at the movie we made. I mean, it was a great movie. Rod Lurie, wonderful director, Killing Reagan, and it was more about a love story and about a man who was emotionally damaged, Hinckley, and a love story between Nancy and Ronnie, and politics was not the central theme of it, but it was part of it, and
Right.
it was a wonderful film, wonderful book, must
What
say.
I liked about it, and as the executive producer, I had to okay everything, and you were easy to okay. But I said
Thank
Cynthia
you.
Nixon, who played number one, hates me, but that's all right. I don't, if I were not to work with anybody who didn't hate me, I wouldn't have anybody to work with. So I said, yeah, Cynthia's a really good actress, Sex in the City, and they said, hey, she hates me. But she played Nancy Reagan, who is no liberal, and Cynthia, of course, is. Uh, Really down. I mean, you guys are so professional,
Yeah.
and it worked great. No
Oh
angst
yeah.
at all. I don't think.
No, we never discussed that. We never felt that. We just dealt with the humanity of Nancy and Ronnie, and that was the core thing that we went after and we did. And I mean, she's such a good actor. Mike Nichols had her in two plays on Broadway at the same time. She did the first act in one play and then ran down the street and did the second act in another play. Um, and no, I don't think anyone's ever done that before or
Right.
since.
In the book, again, damn glad to meet you. Which, if you know anything about Animal House, a great line in it. You get into John Belushi, who everybody remembers. I mean, he a transcendent star, died in his early 30s from excess. Did you know when you were working with him? I know he was zipping back and forth between Saturday Night Live, and you guys are out in
Right.
Oregon shooting a film. Did anybody develop a rapport with him, or was he just kind of a ghost that went in and left?
No, he was so open and like many improv actors, which and the credo of an improv actor is yes, you're my partner. We're all in the same team. You say something, I'll build on that. You say, look at that wall. Well, yeah, how high? How are we going to get over it? So, and he was very gracious, and it was my first comedy, and he was so supportive and giving to me, and I became friends with him and would go visit him in New York and when he was doing Saturday Night Live. And then we worked again on 1941, but I could see the ravages
Yeah.
that the industry had taken on him, the drugs, the partying and that kind of thing. And everyone wanted to have fun with John, that was,
Why didn't
and you
you
couldn't avoid it.
why didn't you fall into that trap? I mean, you did a little bit in the book, you describe it, but you really didn't let it debilitate you. Why?
You know, I was lucky enough to start as a kid actor, and so I worked with people that worked in vaudeville, which was tough. And you worked 3 to 5 shows a day, and you had to bring it to every show, and you had to prepare. And Lucille Ball taught me that, and Jackie Gleason, the great one, he taught me that. And really one of the big influences in my life that sort of got my head out of my butt was Kurt Russell, who is a wonderful actor, and it was a professional baseball player. And
Yeah.
he taught me that acting and show business is more, it's like professional sports. You're gonna hit a home run one day, you're gonna strike out 3 times one day. Don't get your head too big about any one thing. Don't get it in your head about it. You're striking out. Just keep going, and discipline, discipline, discipline. And I think maybe that's what sort of saved me. I never played around when I was working, between shows maybe, but that was my own time.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. It's good to see you again, Tim, and thanks a lot for being in
Great to
Killing
see
Reagan.
you,
That was
Bill.
one of the highlights of my movie career.
I
And the
love
book,
that part. I love playing him.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
The book is Damn Glad to Meet You. You can get it anywhere, and I'll be out chasing Matheson around someday when he least expects it. So we'll see you
Good.
soon. Right.
Thank you, Bill. Great to see you.
To watch the full episodes of the No Spin News, visit BillO'Reilly.com and sign up to become a premium or concierge member. That's BillO'Reilly.com. Sign up and start watching today.